Hello and welcome to the Dustin Eric Podcast Show brought to you by Mimosa Networks. Hi, I'm Dustin.
And I'm Eric.
And I'm Jeff.
So it's kind of the Mimosa Podcast Show with Dustin, Eric, and Jeff now. So
I'm no longer a special guest. I'm part of the furniture.
Welcome to the show.
Yeah.
Glad to have you guys here. It's been over a year since we've done a podcast, and it's been, well, a lot longer since we've done an in-person podcast. So it's been a long time. So it's really nice to have everybody back in the studio here. Looks a little different, hopefully a little fancier. I like it. It's nice
cozy.
Nice and cozy, yes. So today we're on episode number 40, big number 40, over the hill now.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about the Mimosa A6 and C6 today, the 6 series products. You know, we've been receiving a boatload of questions and, you know, just people needing general help with the A6 because it's a brand new product from Mimosa. While the UI looks similar to our last products, it's a completely different beast. So I have 16 different questions here.
Nice.
that are common questions.
Let's do it. See what we can.
And there might be even more that you guys know of that you can bring up on the show here. So let's go ahead and get rolling here because it's going to be a little bit longer than normal, I think. So
great.
Number 1, what is the default username after I set up my password on my radio? I can't log in.
Is that a trick question?
In the back, root.
Yes. So
and Mimosa.
So
right?
For initial login, it's root.
Yep. So this can be changed after you log into the radio for the first time, but the default is definitely root for the username.
Okay. And then Mimosa, lower case.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
So I've learned from our engineering group that we're going towards the standard Unix type of logon where you have the read, write, and admin password level. So with root, that gives you full rights to the product, whereas there's ways that you can limit the access based on who the person's logging in, and that can be set up afterwards.
Great. So number 2 is how do I connect my A6 and C6 to the cloud? Do either of you know the answer to that?
Well, once you log in, can enable remote management in the UI, but isn't it defaulted like that?
Well, there's actually a public and private key that you have to upload into your cloud management. In this case, I believe it's a private key, some type of a hash key that you need to copy and paste from the NMS section of the configuration. And you copy and paste that and bring it into the cloud. And I believe it's NetConf.
Yeah, so it's a new it's a new type of authentication that we're using called NetConf.
Yeah,
I think it's been around quite a while, but it's something that we're using for all of our future products, and so the A6 and C6 is starting that up. So we have a nice step-by-step walkthrough on that on the help site. So if you go to the A6 under the FAQs, it's like the second one. It says, how do I connect my A6 to the cloud? And you can just follow that step by step for both the A6 and the C6. So they don't just automatically connect to the cloud. You have to manually set that up for each one.
So, yeah, that's new. That's new on me.
Yep.
So how about the key? So how about the unlock key? The make key. Can I get on there as an end user, generate an unlock, and get in?
Yeah, it's the unlock key it's still exactly the same to unlock it. It just doesn't connect it to the cloud automatically like it would with the original legacy Mimosa products.
Gotcha. Okay.
All right, so the next one here is what is the farthest distance that I can connect an A6 to a C6?
Depends on how long of a Ethernet cable you have.
So this is a hard one because this is something that we've been talking about a lot. So
so what we're seeing in the field at fantastic rates, we're seeing out to about 3 miles. I would say the best throughputs that we're seeing with our existing X25 dish on the C6 is out, say, 2 to 3 miles at this point, anyway.
Well, you've just made a lot of people mad. So theoretical max distance is 9.5 kilometers, right at 6 miles. We've connected clients up to right at 4 miles.
4 miles.
And they've been, okay. But you have to keep in mind that the A6 is an integrated antenna. And it's not meant to go super long distance because it's not connectorized. You can't put your own sector antennas on there or horns or whatever you're trying to do. It's limited to the antenna. And regardless of what size antenna you have on the client radio, just because the client can shoot at high power doesn't mean that it's going to be a good connection.
Right, and to that point, you're on an X25 right now, N5 X25 on your C6, and you're running 2-3 miles. In order to, you might be able to, like you said, approach that 4 or 5 mile range. However, it's not just about the gain on the other end. When we do launch our X30 screw-on dish antenna.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, is that a spoiler?
That's a spoiler.
Sorry for spoiler alert. X30.
At least you didn't say
right,
35.
Right,
Oh.
right. Right now is our X25 is about 18-inch diameter. We're going to have an X30, and you can give us the latest on maybe a ETA or approximate launch time on the X30. Even if you take your X30 with today's firmware on the A6, et cetera, and attach an X30 onto that C6, and you try to make that 4 and that 5 plus miles in connection at greater than, say, a 1x20 or 1x40, there's still some other behind-the-scenes stuff that the engineering teams are working on as far as some propagation delays. You know, you got a client at 1/10 of a mile, and now you're trying to get somebody outside that 3 mile range. He's at 4 miles and 5. There's some behind the scenes stuff again that needs to be kind of worked out, and then we'll see the increase and also the increase in the channel operating widths and things like that.
So you bring a good point up. You shouldn't expect, a 160 megahertz channel to get you
Right.
long distance. You have to reduce your channel width to get to those distances. And trying to do a 160 megahertz channel at 10 miles is just not something that's feasible at this point.
So we've run that down in 160 down in Uni 2, above around 5,500 megahertz, and we've already looked at these things in some of these ranges that are near in with down tilting an A6 at certain angles, at certain physical height above ground, and then further out. And so we've placed them in the legal FCC areas in the spectrum, and push the limits and see what we can get and how they behave. So we're always looking at these things live in the field, and not just in the labs and on the rooftops.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what he said.
Over.
No, I think it's good. I think we're all expecting and really anticipating the larger screw-on type antenna. I know the X30 is coming out is going to be a real winner, I believe, because a couple of reasons. One, obviously the size does matter, and when it comes to RF. But I think secondly is the design will be a little bit different. Whereas today the X25, the radio itself holds the antenna, whereas the X30 will actually have its own bracket, and the radio will hang off the backside of the X30. So it'll be even more durable design, especially for wind load purposes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, brand new bracketry, really nice and robust. Yep.
All right, so we'll move on here to number 4. Where are management VLANs or data VLANs? We have that functionality on A5C and more so on A5X. So where are they? When will they be here?
Management's coming up yesterday. Jeff?
Well, I
over to
know
you.
that we're continually developing the feature sets in the A6 and the C6X. Our goal was to get the product out the door so that we can meet the market demands. We have continual development, as I understand, for VLAN support, Q&Q, QoS, et cetera. All that is being worked out in our lab right now, and that feature set will be released fairly soon, but I don't have an ETA at this point.
So we're looking at that hopefully by latest of end of the quarter.
Yeah.
So we do have that in alpha right now. It's in the QA lab, and it's being tested extensively to make sure that everything works and it's working well, because we don't want to, send out software that's only half baked.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to do that.
So number 5, C5X compatibility. So why can't I connect my C5Xs to my A6?
That by the way is probably the most popular global question. What'd you say?
I think everyone's been expecting it, and it is coming. Right now, we have it in our labs, and we're testing it to make sure that it's bulletproof. So when we do roll it out, it won't be, as you call, half-baked, because no one likes to be a guinea pig to the firmware guys. So we're making sure that the firmware is actually working well. I have it running in my lab right now, and it works very well. So I think we're going to see it fairly soon. Do you have an ETA? Have you heard anything?
So, just like you, I have it running here. The biggest issue is that you would think that the porting over all this stuff from the A5C and the A5X would be easy. But you have to keep in mind it's a different chip completely. We had to start from scratch on this.
Yep.
And so a lot of these things like VLANs and some other things we're going to talk about takes time to get in there. So the C5X and the A5C used a protocol where they communicated with each other. That doesn't exist in the AX hardware.
Right.
So they're having to kind of rebuild that communication protocol. So at this point, the C5X will connect, and it's passing traffic, and it passes it well, but it's not communicating with the A6. So you're not seeing any data from it. You're not getting any of its IP information or anything like that. So so they're still working on rebuilding that. So it's half working, and I understand that the most important part is there, but we're trying to finish that before we bring it out. So that's also slated to come with the final version of VLANs here at the end of the quarter. Don't take that as definite date. I'm looking at you people.
End of the quarter.
Because, things happen, but we're looking at the end of the quarter right now, and, hopefully will continue to be the case. And like I said, we've made good progress on it. Jeff and I are using it. It's working okay. So I don't see any reason why that won't be pushed out farther, because there's pretty much everyone out there is looking for this feature. It's high priority.
Yeah, I think the priority is that there's a lot of folks out there that want to forklift their existing hardware, A5, A5C out of their network and put in the A6, and then make sure it's backwards compatible, which we know that's a legitimate request, and we're very sensitive to that, and our engineers are working on it to have it come out come out in a way that it will work out very well for everyone, and it won't be any issues whether you're doing C5X or C6X. Right.
There's what, hundreds of thousands of C5 products, C5C, C5X, and so on. So that's a most welcome part of the hardware and the equipment, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
All right. So number 6 is what SFP Plus have we tested with the A6? What should we buy?
Well, what I've used, and it seems to be a great price, is the G-Tech SFP cards. I got them from Amazon. They're around $18 each, so pretty inexpensive. I never thought I'd see the day where SFP would be that inexpensive, but you can get them on Amazon. G-Tech, there's 2 different flavors. There's a 850 and a 1310 nanometer, and I believe both of those are multi-mode fiber.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've heard recently some issues with using single-mode fiber. You had some customers.
We only support multi-mode.
Yeah, so that's just something to keep in mind.
And that's I have also an A6 at home. I've tried with the G-Tech. Those are the ones with the yellow stripe.
Yep, the yellow
logo.
stripe.
Okay. And then I'm using MicroTik, a couple of MicroTik flavors in pairs, and another brand or 2, and they all seem to be, they light right up. And if you look at the back of your A6, you'll see there's 2 green LEDs, SFP 1 and 2 different LEDs. Those will fire right up. You also see the SFP handshake inside the UI on the main dashboard, page 2.
So
just make sure that you have the right, when you order it from Amazon, you have the right LC connector, whatever you're using there, so that way you can connect the dots.
We'll see if we can get those model numbers for you guys, and we'll stick them in the description of the video so you can check that.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is make sure you get the 10 gigabit SFP cards, because I tried a 1 gigabit like a Finisar and it didn't work, unfortunately.
So to sum this up, we only support multi-mode and we only support 10
gigabit.
Yeah, 10 gig. Okay. The next one is, do you guys have a DC power supply that you have tried or that you suggest for this?
We're looking. So on the A6, there's two ways to power it up generally. One is through the Cat 6, Cat 7 cable port, the ETH copper port. You can go in there conventionally and power the unit up with active or passive.
Yes.
We good there?
BT.
Huh?
BT.
The BT, okay, 11.BT. So the other way is we have a separate, also IP67 gland all the way across the board there, DC input with a Phoenix or Molex, a 2-pin, little plus and minus, polarized pin, so you can go right there. So if you're running, you get the units at 200 feet up up the tower or plus or whatever, you can hit it with a separate DC supply. And that's good there. And also, the bonus is that the current handling will run around maybe an amp at max traffic load. And that also kind of equates to a low power consumption or wattage. Very low in the market, the A6 as far as power consumption. I think it's at 40 watts or so compared to double on some of the other manufacturers.
Maybe even
loads.
more for some.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I know that some customers have told me that many tower owners will not allow AC being ran up the tower. So the fact that you have the 48-volt port on the A6 gives you that flexibility, like you said, to overcome that 328 feet limitation with the PoE injected Ethernet cable. So it gives you that flexibility that everyone's been wanting.
And another question that I know has come up on that is, so you're co-locating. You have two A6s or four A6s. Well, all the units on that single tower, all the A6s will need their own DC supply, each one. But you can use an SFP, go in tandem, and come up the pole, the mast with a single fiber run, optic run, and then kind of tandem out.
Daisy chain them, yeah.
Daisy chain each port there, so you can go around the horn and communicate. And for backup, do we still have ETH port failover? If the fiber goes down, will it fail over to the copper port? Do we have that currently?
So
is that part of the
that's
firmware?
on always, because
Always.
it's just a switch in there. So the fiber ports and the Ethernet port are all talking at the same time. So keep in mind, if you have both the Ethernet cable and the fiber cable plugged into the same switch at the bottom of the tower or wherever you're plugging this in, you're going to cause a network loop.
Right.
Yes, it will.
Okay.
I found out the hard way.
I know where you're at there.
Yeah.
So do we have any recommendations on vendor for DC power supply then?
I've seen some of the Tyco.
Yeah,
pretty robust, $60. DC in and DC out, or some kind of some flavor of AC in and DC out, and so forth. So there's a variety of vendors, I would say, that can easily handle the load or the
and just make sure when you do buy a power supply that you take a look at the specification sheet that we publish, because it does tell you the operating load, wattage, and so forth for the A6.
Good point.
Right. Okay, and number 8, which is something we kind of talked about before, and I'll just mention the question, but we'll probably just go on by it, which is, where are the A5 and A5C and A5X features on the A6? And so we kind of talked about this back at, number 4 on VLANs, that the A6 is on a brand new chip. It's the AX chip. It's not an AC chip. They had to basically do everything from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So all those features have to be redone on the A6. They're not just something they can just copy code over. Just to give you an example, the Spectrum analyzer was a huge pain, and this is because they had to completely redo it. It's not just something they can port over. They tried porting it over, but the code is so different they had to redo it, and that's why it functions, differently now than what you're used to. And basically, to give you an example, on the A5C and even other products of the legacy line, that Spectrum analyzer is running all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
On the A6 and the C6, that's not something that works. You have to start the scan. It runs for 3 minutes, and that's all you get until you start another scan. And that's because of the big throughput hit that the engineering team saw when it was running constantly. everything is a little different on this new chip than it was.
So they maximize onboard resources, and they said,
right.
hey, if you need to look at the spectrum on the A6, you start that survey. Otherwise, we're not just going to have that consuming whatever it's doing in the background. And,
Right.
And going. Did we talk? I don't know if it's on your list. I might be jumping ahead. Is PoE? PoE is a big one. Is that on your list
No,
for questions?
go ahead. Let's do it.
So we talked about the DC, the Molex input or port, the IP67 DC separate port. At this point, the unit, the A6, is good for passive and active PoE at around 1 amp or 1200 milliamp, 1.2 amp max. So that's good. However, the C6X, that still requires the passive Mimosa PoE. And is that still the case right now for the hardware and
it
the
is.
firmware?
And
Okay.
so there's actually a new PoE specifically for the C6X. So you can use the normal gray Mimosa PoE that you use for pretty much everything, which is a 50-volt PoE.
501-00022.
Yeah, that. Or there's a new black one that is the same vendor, but it's a 24-volt, 1.2 amp.
Okay. Yeah. Yep.
But it's like, I don't know, it's like 60 watt.
And that's just general.
Yeah.
That's just general DC. If we cut the voltage in half, we can double the current or amperage. So we're tipping the scale. We're just playing with the numbers there. But yep,
Right.
yep, absolutely,
So-
sure.
Number 9, it's very easy. What is the default IP for an A6?
That's changed from the old conventional. From all the Mimosa APs, access points, A5Cs, A5X, which were all 1.10. So guess what, Jeff? This one is now
20.
1.20, so across the board.
Now, Eric, I'm going to correct you there because the
Oh.
the A5X is also 1.20.
Oh, pardon me. That's right.
The
Yep.
A5 and the A5C are the only two Mimosa radios
Thank
in
you.
existence to have 1.10 as
That's
the
right.
default IP.
That's right. I went too far down the road there.
No, that's all
Thanks.
right. All right, so number 10, what is the max TX power on the A6 and the C6X?
The A6 24.
24,
That's the TX power.
Yep. Yeah, so 0 was actually, I believe you can go negative on there as well, right? So you below 0.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of our products you can do
Yeah,
that.
you go below 0, so 0 to 24. And then the key there is that you want to make sure you adhere to FCC compliance. So I believe for 6 gigahertz, maximum is 36 dBm ERP at the access point, and for the client, it's 30 dBm client. So, that's just something keep in mind, especially if you're operating under experimental license. They'll often spell that out as far as your requirements for the license.
And while the FCC is more strict than most other regulatory bodies, ERP regulations exist for most of the world.
Right.
So this is depending on your country's regulations.
There you go. Yep.
All right, number 11, and we've kind of already covered this too, but how should I deploy this radio? What is the optimal use case for this radio? How should I be trying to use it?
That's a good question. Well, obviously point to multi-point, right? So you're going to be using it in an environment where you want to support more users than what you previously had, maybe with an A5C, where you get 30, 40 users on one of those devices. A6 you can get up to theoretically up to 200.
So right now 100, and then later on this year up
It'll
to
be 200,
250
yeah.
clients.
And the mode?
What?
In interop?
Yeah, in
or-
Wi-Fi interrupt. mode.
Interrupt
Okay.
mode, yeah.
I don't know about SRS right
wanna-
now.
Here, let's edit that.
What are you trying to
I
say?
just want to make sure that we kind of winged into SRS, and we didn't want to discuss SRS, right?
We
Well,
are.
I
It's
wanna-
number 16.
Is that okay? Here, can we do that again, please?
Sure.
3, 2, 1.
So number 11, how should I deploy this radio? So let me narrow this down a little bit for you. So should I deploy this as a micropop? Should I deploy this on a tower? Should it be short range or long range? What is the most optimal use for this radio?
Is
I'll
that a
take
multiple? Is there all the above?
Sure.
Well, I'd say all the above. It really depends on your environment. So the flexibility of the A6 is that, one, you're not just held at the 5 gigahertz frequency, but if you have experimental license today, you can operate in 6 gigahertz. The beauty of the A6 is it does support more client radios than the A5 series radio. So if you're looking for capacity, that's definitely the radio for that. I think thirdly, the fact that it has a 10 gigabit SFP port, it provides you a greater bandwidth backhaul wise. So it can support the larger quantity of customers. So so all the above is my take. What's your thoughts on it?
Yeah,
Eric?
I would say if you're looking at a solution, look at the maybe a viable number of customers in a neighborhood, and out a tenth of a mile, and out at 2 miles and 3 miles currently, and then look at the view sheds on a design tool, Mimosa NDT Network Design Tool, and that's free online, or whatever Google Planner, InfoVista, whatever you have for tools, and to kind of see. For your specific application and your A6 tower location or rooftop location for your A6 parking structure, library rooftop at 60 feet, whatever you got, and then kind of design it and play around with a tool and see what you can do with the built-in vertical beam width as far as the patterns going up and down, and as the view shed spreads out to that 10th or that 3 mile. And then where that 90-degree integrated sector, what it will do for you as far as a left and a right side client edge, and then do I need to co-locate in 2023 or maybe 2024? I'm going to add another A6 or two to that neighborhood, to that tower. And then I might have another A6 a couple miles away, so I'm going to do the same thing as far as the general topology there and see what I can get away with, taking in rolling hills and foliage and line of sight and stuff, and really kind of load it down if I need to. But I know I can build out in the future if I only have a handful of C6s for now. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is, in my opinion based. I would see this radio more as a short range micropop kind of radio, because you are limited because it's an integrated antenna. Even though it's a 90-degree antenna, you could put 4 of these up on a lower rooftop and pick up all the people that are nearby. And 5 and 6 gigahertz is more of a line of sight type deal, or at least with Mimosa it is. But we do have a fancy something another coming sooner.
I was going to say,
rather than later for non-line of sight deployments.
Yeah.
Non-line of sight
Hint,
deployments. Hint. Wink, wink. So just hang in there. We've got something in the works, and it's coming along. It's going to have LEDs on the bottom of it. It'll be a nice radio. It'll have GPS. Mm-hmm. So, it'll be more for the near and non-line of sight deployments.
Yeah, I agree with it being kind of a short-range radio. I mean, it's a lot of horsepower of a radio. I think where I would say longer range is when the 30 dBi dish comes out, that you can push the envelope a little further out with a higher gain antenna. But as it stands right now, I think it's definitely a short to medium range point-to-multipoint solution.
So I look at it instead of going at just as a short range or short to mid at a tenth, at a half a mile, maybe a mile, which is a good mile's decent range for clients. I look at it as a little further out. I kind of get into that 2 to 3 mile current radius around it. For either colo or single 90 sector. I like the 2 to 3 mile at full capacity with upper MCS rates on it right now. Right. I'm not going to limit it to. We're designing things now in the different markets for Chicago, outside of downtown Los Angeles, for example, Houston, Washington D.C., just to do some designs, and we're pushing these things out 2 and 3 miles and looking at the MCS rate. So I think instead of taking that small quarter mile or that 1 mile, let's look at it with larger radiuses and so forth, and a good number of clients associated. So I like the range of it as a pop. Is there a medium pop?
Well, 3 miles is more, more along the lines of what I'm thinking, because, point to multipoint has,
changed.
Mainly traditionally been, somewhat shorter range, and pushing that, out, you're pushing a wide, antenna, like a 60 or 90 degree to its its maximum distance, and that's just not going to give a good quality of service to end users. So keeping that distance shorter helps with interference and connection quality and SNR levels, and we could go on and on. So
yeah, and I think the last thing I would say is that your environment has a lot to do with it too. I know when we were testing the A6 last year, we were testing a rural environment, and we were getting some pretty good distances there. And then we did the testing here in the Bay Area. We were testing around 3 mile range, and we were having very respectful performance at that distance. So, again, I think the size of the antenna and the environment will have a lot to do with that going further out.
We also saw in that time frame of the test, we also saw new firmware.
Right.
And the firmware iterations, they change every 3.5 weeks or so, and then some. So
sometimes
we're
daily.
always souping up, beefing up that firmware, hardware collaboration there. So
all right, we could probably talk about this all day. So let's go ahead and get to number 12. So let me do number 12. I'm gonna look at you when I'm talking about number 12. So I've had some people go, they buy the A6 in the U.S. and they get mad at me and at us because they can't use 6 gigahertz on this radio. It was marketed as a 6 gigahertz radio, but why can't I use it? So let me turn here and look at the camera. So for those of you who don't know, yes, this is a 6 gigahertz radio. You can use 6 gigahertz on this radio, and we have customers in the United States who are using 6 gigahertz on this radio. But if you aren't aware, there is a system called the AFC coming, which is more of it's kind of a CBRS type solution for 6 gigahertz where people have to register, and it's kind of a light license type system that you have to kind of coordinate yourself with other users of that spectrum. And so our users that are using 6 gigahertz right now, which they've been using on A5C and A5X as well, you have to file for an experimental license to use that spectrum. So yes, you can use the A6 in 6 gigahertz. You just have to go through the work to do it. And then, if you don't, you have to wait for the AFC to come out. So please don't yell at us and say you can't use 6 gigahertz, because you can. And we're here to help you. And we're here to help guide you. There's no reason to do that. So
don't yell at Dustin.
Yeah, please. So if you want to do 6 gigahertz, I have a guide to help you with that. Our coordination partner, Liz Creekmore at IntelPath, can help you do that for a very nominal fee. Sub $1,000 for doing that work, which is very cheap. There are other people out there who charge several $1,000s for that. So you can utilize that spectrum, today, and you should, try to utilize that spectrum if you can before it's not able to be just free use anymore.
So you're the messenger, is that what you're saying? But we understand, though, the challenges, absolutely, and we welcome all the input from the various forums and stuff.
Right.
So please come on in, and we're answering these things daily on our support channel and our live support chat and so forth. We're there with you. So as you bring these things to us, we answer and respond to these different questions. Good questions too. They're all. We need the input, and we welcome all the input, because that's how we move this forward, and we take care of folks. So.
Yep, and I think it's a 7-page walkthrough guide on how to do this. I think I have that I wrote up a year or so ago for A5C and have updated it for A6. So, just.
And the guide you're talking about, is that the how to apply for an experimental license? Yeah, okay.
It is.
Oh, the STA paper, yeah. Okay.
Very good write-up.
Okay. And there's a vendor a competitor who kind of stole my guide and kind of just changed the wording. Yeah, it looks exactly like what I wrote.
Terrible.
But I won't say their name. But they're a local company to the Bay Area. So anyway,
is that the Chicago Bay Area?
What? No.
San Francisco Bay Area.
All right, so number 13, is MU on automatically, or do I need to enable it? How do I make it work? So that's a good question, and I am unsure if my colleagues across the table here know the answer to that. So the answer to that is it's always on, and for it to enable, the clients have to have a certain degree of distance between them. So we've seen between 8 and 10 degrees is the minimum to make MU-MIMO work. And it depends on distance as well. So they have to be relatively, close in distance from the AP, and they have to be, with a certain degree to make that work. If you go, say we tried at 40 degrees, the MU group didn't form. They have to be somewhat close in distance and proximity to make that work.
So to explain for the MU, the multi-user, so multi-client,
Yeah.
Simultaneously associate to the A6. And then the degrees, explain the degrees. If I have a Mrs. Smith household here and Mr. Garcia's household here, is this what you're talking about as far as separation? Here's their C6, here's the other C6.
So we're talking about
how does this work? So
this
that
too.
the
Hands
people
up, everyone. Here we go.
So that go ahead. So that the audience understands the separation.
So we're talking about separation between clients, but
Right.
we're also talking about separation in distance from the AP as well. So if you have clients like this,
Okay.
they're 10 degrees apart, but they're,
One's close
1
than the
mile
other.
and 2
Yeah.
mile,
Okay.
you're going to have a harder time forming an MU group than if you were in a neighborhood with multiple clients and you have,
Right.
say, one person at this end of the road and this person at the end of the road that's, say, 10 degrees apart that's facing the AP. These two are going to have a much easier and much more successful time forming what's called an MU group.
Okay.
Whereas, with this or, 40-degree wide kind of connections
Right.
probably won't form an MU group.
Currently, with the current firmware, if I'm at 40, I can expect with these simultaneous clients associated, I get X throughput, get real good throughput. Are you saying as I move, the two households are here aiming towards the A6, that it's less of a throughput?
So you're going to get good throughput regardless. But if you do MU-MIMO, that just means that they can send and receive at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
And so they get, the full benefit of the, MU-MIMO. So we support 3x MU-MIMO right now. So basically 3 clients that are within, like
on a
10
slice.
degrees of each other in a somewhat similar distance. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but facing the AP kind of grouped together.
So that's existing hardware in the C6, existing hardware in the A6, but this sounds like it's a combination of firmware, the firmware as it progresses, right? There'll be there'll be changes in this in the firmware as it goes to soup up some of the not velocity factors, some of the time associations with this stuff, right? I mean, this is kind of a firmware thing.
So
Yeah,
it's
right.
of course it's all software. We'll ultimately support 4 MU-MIMO, but right now it's 3, and we tested 3 for many months. I think around the Bay Area and even further away than that. But 3 was a sweet spot for us. 4 we didn't really see much improvement on. So
And the minimum is if it doesn't meet the MU-MIMO results, then it defaults back to SU-MIMO, right?
right, single
Yep.
user MIMO.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so number 14, can I use C5 or C6X in point-to-point mode? So
Oh, big topic.
it is a very big topic. So basically, no. To just sum it up, no, you cannot use C6X as point-to-point. You probably will not be able to do C6X as point-to-point for the foreseeable future. We prioritized other features, a lot of these that we've talked about before, over C6X point-to-point, but we also have a new point-to-point radio coming here
There you go.
in the next few months called the B6X.
There you go.
Another spoiler alert, by the way, for those of you that don't know about it. And just real quick, I'm not pushing B6X or anything, even though I kind of am.
Yes.
It does 3.4 gigabit aggregate, whereas this definitely would not do that. It has a 10 gig SFP port and an Ethernet port on it, similar to the A6. So it will be able to do much more than the C6X would be able to do anyway. And it'll also have dual channel support, which you're probably familiar with the B series radios. So just to not go real deep into that's the main reason C6X will never be point to point.
Yeah,
Well,
and the-
except on your
yeah.
X25, your X30,
Yeah.
and so forth. So that's the bonus. Yeah. Awesome.
And I think the B6X what's really cool about that is being one of the things we pride ourselves here at Mimosa by Airspan is that we build our stuff from the ground floor up. So the B6X is not, we're not taking a C6X and and hammering it into a B6X. We're actually building from ground floor up. So we're specifically designing the B6X for point-to-point. So it's not going to be something that's morphed into another feature set. It will be ground floor design.
Dedicated board. And
Right.
Yeah. Hardware. Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome.
So number 15, can I use third-party devices on the A6? So because the A6 is in Wi-Fi interop mode,
Right.
you can use third-party devices like phones and laptops, and even in AX mode on the A6, you can, like, my cell phone is an AX Wi-Fi. I can connect up and run speed tests and use it just fine. Now, that doesn't mean that we've tested all different configurations. We haven't tested competitor products on the A6, so that would be something that you could try, and it should work, but it's not something that we will say 100% will work. So if it's a standard Wi-Fi device with Wi-Fi mode on it, it should connect up and work. You just won't have it's similar to the C5X problem right now, where you won't have any of the data that displays on the dashboard for it. You'll know it's connected, but that's about all you'll know.
Yeah, I think in Wi-Fi interop mode, it gives you the benefits that everyone wants as far as using that with a laptop or a cell phone. Just keep in mind that a laptop, or even worse yet, a phone, the antenna is very small. So you're not going to get the distance on the device you would with a laptop, and you're not going to get the distance on the device unless you use C6X, where it's going to give you that greater beam width and greater distance overall. Yeah.
Yep.
All right, and then the last one here. I know it's been a long podcast, but we appreciate you sticking it out with us. Number 16. Why can't I use SRS mode on the A6? You've talked a lot about Wi-Fi, but where's the sync mode at? And so that's a good question. And I'd like to have SRS mode too, but it's not. It's prioritized. It's an important feature. It'll be here, soon-ish. But keep in mind, like we talked about in previous questions, all of that stuff is having to be built from the ground up. And so the good thing about the A6 on the AX platform, it has OFDMA resource units. So even without SRS mode, you can co-locate these and help mitigate interference just with the inherent features on the AX chip. So you don't have sync. I got that. But, you shouldn't just go, well, I can't use that, because, the OFDMA is a very important feature with any AX chip, not just with Mimosa, but just in general for interference mitigation and, being able to transmit and receive on such small channel chunks that interference isn't as big of a problem as it would be on legacy AC devices and Mimosa or any other vendor that uses the AC.
Right.
Yep.
Anything else you guys want to add? Anything other than what we talked about we need to talk about before we end the show?
I'm good. You have anything?
I think I'm good. It comes complete with the bracketing that you saw on the Mimosa 45 degree sector antennas. So it has that hardware on board, and it's got an ample a mechanical down tilt and up tilt on that as well. It weighs just under 9 pounds, the A6, at about dimensions around 19 by 3 deep, at about 11, I think, on the
11 and a half inches, yeah.
11 and a half, so 19, 11 and a half, 3. So that's the size of it. So we don't have one here, but it's this big. But that's the nuts and bolts, fully 4-port IP67. You want to tell us what the rough U.S. dollar MSRP is on that? Can we say that's about $19.99?
Yeah, it's $2K.
Okay.
$2K USD.
Okay.
I have no idea what that is in the rest of the world, but
Yep.
that's what Google's for, I guess. So, all right. Well, we'll go ahead and end the show then. Thanks for joining us for our first show back in a very long time, and we hope to see you on our next podcast.
All right.
Thanks for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe or follow button to stay up to date with our latest podcast. which will be available on YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, and SoundCloud.